Doing business in Africa. You can't afford to be without Africa Investor.
So I'm just going to start by welcoming you on behalf of Africa Investor, the Continental Business Network and the African Green Infrastructure Investment Bank to this institutional investor consultation on the International High-Level Panel on Water Investments for their Africa report. As many of you may know, I serve on the advisory board to the International High-Level Panel on Water Investments for Africa, which is essentially a heads of state-led private capital mobilization initiative to address the water security issues across the African continent. A specific objective of the high-level panel is to establish African water as an internationally competitive investable asset class and recommend pathways to assist panel members champion the mobilization of $30 billion of private capital annually between now and 2030, but I think we can already begin to closer align with some of the other SDGs, the Paris Agreement, and Africa's own Agenda 2063, which is for the year 2063, and with the focus of addressing Africa's water investment deficit. So the reason we're here is that a high-level panel report is being prepared to feed into the UN 2030 Water Conference and other sort of high-level investment-related events relating to water this year. The report will be the continent's roadmap to close the water investment gap and showcase institutional investor recommendations about how to mobilize private capital at scale for African water investments through institutional investor public partnerships. This invitation-only water investment leaders consultation, co-hosted by Africa Investor, the Continental Business Network, and the African Green Infrastructure Investment Bank, will be instrumental in assisting the consultant, Guy Hudson, who's with us now, include practical investor recommendations, facts, and key messages within the high-level panel's report, with the goal of really stimulating institutional investor interest in African water as an investable asset class, and of course to deepen the understanding of African government leaders and garner their support, their ongoing and consistent support around the implementation of catalytic private capital mobilization opportunities and reforms. Guy has kindly shared with us the draft of the report yesterday, and on a sort of a for our eyes only basis, so please do not circulate it. And along with that, he also included a presentation. For those of you who haven't received that, we'll circulate it after the meeting, but I think Guy will be taking us through the majority of that data. So today's agenda includes sort of this welcome opening remarks from myself. I'll be chairing the meeting. It will then be followed up by a presentation to investors on the high-level panel's report, and that will be done by Guy. That will be then followed by a number of interventions, what I've described as successive investor recommendations and reflections to the high-level panel and Guy to note, hopefully, and then it will sort of close out with a Q&A discussion around both sets of those conversations, and then we'll have a sort of a 2-minute closing remarks. As I mentioned, Guy has included in his presentation, for those who haven't received it, it's the last or penultimate slide in his PowerPoint presentation that hopefully you would have received yesterday for those who received it. His key sort of questions for us to ponder as we think and listen to all presentations today and think about our interventions are: one, Africa is made up of 54 heterogeneous countries. How do we as investors see this being sort of conglomerated or decoupled, or do we look at sub-regional, do we look at continental, just national? He's asking us some of those particular questions, and that's one of the key things that he would like us to be able to answer. His next major issue that I think he'd like us to be able to talk to as well is, what are our perceptions of the 3 major bottlenecks, and he will talk about those specific bottlenecks to investing in water security in Africa, and just sort of whether they're surmountable, if so how, if not why. And then his last sort of major big ask and question is what else is needed in the report, which he's going to take us through from the perspective of both domestic as well as global institutional investors and what additional reference materials or facts should he know about.
Doing business in Africa, you can't afford to be without Africa Investor.